Citizen from Monroeville.
I would like to call to order the Municipality of Monroeville's Citizens Night meeting for February 8th, 2018. If you'd please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Him.
I pledge allegiance to the
flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All members of council are here except for Mr. Johns. We're going to be starting up with our Citizens Night portion. I have a sign-in sheet here in front of me. I'll be calling people up to that signed in. But if you didn't sign in yet, you'll have an opportunity to do so. We're going to hold to a 5-minute comment period, 5-minute limit. This is in an effort to keep our meeting going smoothly. I feel that 5 minutes you should be able to get your point across. If you don't feel that way, I'd be happy to speak with you after the meeting or at a later date. I will give you a 1-minute indication just to let you know where you're at with time. And if there is some discussion while you're commenting, I'll do my best to try to give you your full 5 minutes, so we're not taking up your 5 minutes if we're talking during your 5 minutes. Okay? So first we have Jay Wright. The floor is yours, Mr. Wright.
Okay, well, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councilman, solicitor, manager, I know most of you. I don't know Mr. Poach yet, but how are you, sir?
We have met in the past, Mr. Wright.
First of all, let me start. Thank you, Mr. Ratcher, for sending me that wonderful case. It's so long it's hard to read, but it's fun.
It's good when you can't sleep.
Oh, yeah, it does. It's a good thing. Just a couple changes. Why are we changing the ordinance from M2 industrial to S1 for the gas and oil?
You're asking me that question?
I'd ask the mayor or you, whoever will answer.
Well, the ordinance, we're still in the discussion of the ordinance. We're still, this, just so everyone knows, and I should have said that before you started speaking, sorry, Mr. Wright, but this ordinance is planning to be tabled for Tuesday, which means we won't be taking action on it. It was tabled by the Planning Commission, and Council's made the decision to wait until the Planning Commission adds their comments before we act on it. So this is still a fluid ordinance that we're working on.
Okay. Next question. Whose idea was it to change and make the ordinance to change the ordinance?
We asked Mr. Ratcher to prepare an ordinance for us, a draft ordinance, so then that way we can have it go through the scrutiny we just talked about, the Planning Commission, resident input, council discussion, also county input, which we have not received yet either.
Okay, well, I know that, Mr. Mayor, but the problem is somebody up there had to direct Mr. Ratcher to put it into S1 instead of M2 industrial.
No,
Was it council?
Maybe I can help. Maybe
Okay.
I can help. It was actually a discussion that I had. I had some discussions with the planning department, had some discussions with Tim. We decided to do that. As I told you when we spoke last week or whenever it was, none of that's set in stone, obviously. We're in the comment period. We want comments on it. We thought for some reasons it might make sense. There are probably also some reasons that you think it doesn't make sense. Obviously, we want to hear those as well.
Well, the only reason I'm saying, because actually, technically, the law case that you printed for me, they kind of recommend that it stays in industrial at the end. Not
yeah.
totally, they're recommending.
Right, right.
That it stays in industrial, not to be moved. So my next question is, why the rush? Why can't you table this for 3 or 4 months?
That's possible. I mean,
absolutely.
Okay,
it
the
is going to be
reason-
tabled for Tuesday, or I'm going to ask council to table it for Tuesday, and I believe council's in agreement with that until we get our planning commission to go through it, get our feedback from the county as well. But as far as the time limit on it, that's up for council to decide.
Mr. Mayor, may I?
Yes.
Yeah, but Jay, one of the things, if you remember in some of the meetings, a lot of the residents were telling us, hurry up and get another one set in stone. They didn't like the one that was already currently on the books.
Well,
So that's why that was kind of put to where it is right now. We did what the residents asked us to do.
Well, but that was before you passed one to put it in M2 industrial. We asked for one. At the time, it was allowed in all zoning ordinances, am I correct? All
Yeah,
zoning regions.
no. My recollection of it is, though, even after that, we had some speakers coming up here who were saying to us, we really need to get an ordinance on the books in a hurry
Yeah.
Because we're concerned that somebody's going to come in with a drilling permit. Quite
Well, now-
frankly, we
now
would have taken more
Some of the
time.
residents are changing their mind. They
Well,
would like
and,
you to table it.
and Jay, that's fine. I think that, I don't want to speak for council, but I think everybody up here is willing to take as much time as everybody wants to take.
Okay, the reason I'm saying,
Yeah.
Mr. Ratcher, can I call you Mr. I'm solicitor? I'm not
Whatever
ever
you want to
quite
call, you
sure.
can call me Bob if you want. It's okay.
There's two cases right now that are going through the courts. One is Allegheny County, and the other one is Fairfield or something like that.
Fairfield, and I think that one's Allegheny Township.
Allegheny
Yeah.
Township, yeah, and they're both challenging because of the environment that you have to make a zoning ordinance, that will allow fracking. So they're both, and the court could change very easily because the Supreme Court made a big ruling, if any of you read the paper today about it, made a big ruling about the environment.
Yeah.
And that's what Allegheny County is challenging on. Allegheny Township, not county.
Council obviously can, and the mayor can speak for themselves, but from my standpoint, what they've told me, none of us are in a hurry. We're willing to wait 3 months, 6 months, a year, whatever.
Okay. Let me ask you something. Are we letting seismic testing on any borough property?
Not to my knowledge, no.
Well, there's a lot of testing. Mr. Little showed us the map, and there's a lot of seismic testing going on, and most of it, Linda, is in your ward. 80 to 90% of it's in Ward
Are
1.
you talking about on actually the roadways?
Pardon me?
On the actual roadways or on our, like, park property? What do you?
No, I'm asking, is there any on the property? We own a lot of property up by the dump. We pull the deeds. We own a lot of property up there. Not just the fire and training center. We own, I don't know, another 50, 60, 70, 80 acres, Ron. You probably know that.
Yeah, wooded area up there.
There's a lot of property. I'm asking, is there going to be seismic testing on our property?
Are there any permits for seismic testing?
No, there is not. They have to notify. You're talking about private property, Jay. You're not talking about municipal property,
No, I'm
correct?
talking about borough property.
No. There is
No
no
testing?
seismic testing on any borough, on any municipal property right now.
Okay.
Except public roads.
Will council down the road pass an ordinance that there will be no wells on municipal property? You guys all say you're here for the people. Well, the people don't really want wells in Monroeville. There may be a few, but I don't think the majority of people, if you took a vote and put it on a referendum, you would find that out. There are a few people that like wells, but a great majority of the people don't want fracking wells in Monroeville. I'm asking, would council consider making an ordinance that there's no fracking wells in Monroeville? On borough property. You can't stop private property. On borough property. If you guys are all against it, why not?
That's for council to determine.
Well, that's what I'm asking. I mean, I'd like you to think about it. I'll be back. You all know me. I'm not shy. I mean, one thing I'm not is shy, so,
You're kidding.
yeah, I'd like you to think about making an ordinance where you don't allow any fracking wells on borough property.
Municipal.
property.
Municipality, no.
Well, borough, I call it borough.
And you know
Yeah,
what, Jay?
Same thing, okay?
And Jay, just so you know, we can't tell you how we're going to support or not support an item, because if we do that before it even exists, that
We can't
takes us
vote on it.
right out, that takes us right out of the voting process.
It does, but it doesn't if it's your property, Greg. If it's borough property, I checked with a lawyer, and Mr. Ratcher can back this up. You can say none on borough property, and you're not breaking any ordinances or rules or anything else, because you've already said it with no seismic testing. It's the same difference,
Yeah, I was going to
except
bring
you're
that up. We
carrying
did
it
say it
on
was
to
seismic
wells.
testing, yeah.
It's the same thing, so it's not against the law to say that.
I was under the impression that we weren't allowed to just deny.
Well, what
Through the state.
we're talking about here is, we're not talking about the right of anybody to have a gas well anywhere. We're talking about the right of the municipality to make its property available to drill gas wells. And you do control that. You do control what happens there, because
So legally, we can actually say absolutely no drilling on municipal property.
on municipally owned property. you can,
Legally, we
yeah.
could do that?
Right, right.
I was under the
Because what you
impression-
do simply is you just refuse to enter into a contract with anybody. That's all.
Yeah, because you've already said it in seismic testing. You're not letting them seismic test on your property, you're just extending it to wells. I'm just asking, would you consider doing that? Because I think it would be a big step for the people of Monroeville. I really do.
Yes.
Oh, sorry about that. Okay, I thank you. I'm done. I thank you all for listening to me. I will see you again.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Jay.
Thank you.
Okay, very good.
Georgiana Woodhall.
Good evening. Thank you for allowing me to speak here this evening, Mayor. And I'd just like to say that I do want my comments to be a matter of public record. It's not that I don't, I just don't want to discuss anything off the record. You said I could meet with you at another time, or anybody can meet with you at another time.
Oh, no, I was just making sure that, make sure citizens had enough opportunity if they had any
Okay.
concerns for council.
Well, I'm-
However,
right now,
yes, you do have 5 minutes now, which I'm
Thank you.
not counting this right now as I mention this, but I just want to be clear is that you have your comment period now, you have a comment period at our
Right.
council meeting, you're on the planning
I can
commission,
do
so you have
that.
your time there, and then also you'd have another 3 more opportunities when we do vote on this at the Citizens Night.
Okay, well, I'd like to get this cleared up immediately. So I'm looking right now at the settlement agreement that Mr. Little signed on November the 22nd of 2017, and Geokinetics representative Henry, I don't know if I pronounce this correctly, Biggart, Biggart. His title was Director of North America. In this agreement, it specifically states, in Section 5B, Geokinetics shall obtain written permission as required by law from property owners before entering upon and crossing their property. Section 6, notice required. Not less than 30 days prior to commencement of operation authorized by this agreement, Geokinetics shall notify either by U.S. mail or personal delivery at the property all property owners who have a structure within 150 feet of the planned energy source operations or a greater distance if required by law of Geokinetics' anticipated date of commencement of such operations and the type of testing to be utilized. My cousin and I, she lives next to me, we have an agreement. I authorize her to watch my property when I'm not around, if I'm not around, and if anybody is there, she's authorized to approach them and call the police if necessary. I do the same for her. On January the 20th, I received a call from her late in the afternoon that she looked down, saw that my car wasn't there, thought I wasn't at home, even though my husband's car was there. I was in the house. Didn't know that there was someone out on my property. She approached a man standing right next to, this picture was taken in the first time Geokinetics trespassed. I'd just like you to know if they can blow this up to see.
Put it on the tape.
It's on a, right here?
There's
There's a little mark.
mark.
There's a little.
Okay. I have signs posted along the property. I came to the meeting in August when Huntley and Huntley were here, and I made it clear that I sent letters to Geokinetics. I have copies of those letters here that I want to submit to
You have to
Move it
move
down
it to the
Watch on the TV. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, perfect.
When
Yeah.
she approached the gentleman, now this picture was taken the first time, but he was standing next to this tree that has a no trespassing sign on it. She approached him, a conversation took place, and instead of him immediately exiting the property onto Route 130, he continued to trespass. I'm going to show you first a picture of the gentleman, and he was wearing a backpack with a, I don't know if you can see this, some sort of a equipment
Move
on
it
the
to
back
the
of
left
it.
a little bit. Yeah. There you go. Thanks.
Okay. He continued to trespass after the conversation instead of exiting onto Route 130. He walked past 4 signs marked private property and no trespass. This picture was taken the first time as well, but these signs are still up. He continued, as she was talking, to trespass from my property to her property and then onto my corner lot at the on Forbes and Haymaker Road. She followed him on foot and she asked him to what he was doing now. He said he was going up to the Sunoco station So she got in her car and she followed him up. This is a truck that was parked there, and there was another gentleman there. It says Pathfinder Navigation on it. And she then went over to the other gentleman that was there. Now, he didn't trespass. I don't know if I got this right. He was the one trespassing. He didn't trespass, but a second conversation took place. And they tried to tell her they were mapping in the area, that they were going to be seismic testing, that they had permits from PennDOT. The fact of the matter is, if they applied for a permit from PennDOT, they cannot step past that utility pole on any of my property lining.
Did you contact the police?
Yes, I did. Yes, I have copies. I went to the police I called the police department. An officer came. I didn't call them till I got her call later in the day. Not realized, she said, this happened at 10 o'clock in the morning. And I told the officer, I said, this is the second time they've trespassed on my property. Go ahead.
Who is Pathfinders?
Oh, okay.
Who is that
Anyway,
company?
I called Mr. Little. And on Monday, he told me he had no knowledge of them working in the area. And I'd like Mr. Little to, if he would be willing to discuss the conversation that he had with Geokinetics on that day, when you talked.
Yeah, we met with two
Can
guys.
you tell me who Pathfinders is? Because I saw that white
They
truck.
work for
Never heard of them.
Geokinetics.
I saw that white
So,
truck
Mr.
on
Little-
Ramsey.
So you contacted?
We had a meeting with two members from Geokinetics about a week after that, and I told Georgianne that I would ask the gentleman, and he said he had no knowledge whether or not they came on. I tried to describe your property and where it was located. He said he had no knowledge whether or not. He didn't deny it, but he didn't know because they had people out all the way up from, speaking of Allegheny Township, all the way up in that area, Armstrong County, all the way coming down here.
Okay.
They're 200-mile square, 200-mile square area. They had people all over the place. And he didn't know if anybody wanted
Well,
the
they are
property.
responsible for the people that they hire.
Absolutely.
And I have letters here, and I want to submit this because I want to know before I leave her what action you're going to take against Geokinetics for this defiant trespass. I have copies of the letters that I sent to them. You tell me what you need, the pictures, the letters.
Why don't you, if you could give me everything, and I think what we maybe need to do is have Mr. Little, Police Chief Cole, and Mr. Ratcher, and even bring in Mr. Hugas as far as what we have on the books here. And
Well, I
what
called,
our
I
options
filled
are.
out the right to know form on January 24th. I didn't date it, but I called back and said I forgot the date. I asked for the PennDOT permit issued to Geokinetics or Cougar Land, any applications, it's all here. And then I received a letter back from Mr. Sedlak. Thank you, Mr. Sedlak, that they needed another 30 days. So
Yeah, so
nobody can answer that question for me.
I don't know
So
if we
I'll
have-
step away and I'll
No, if
get
you
this
could hand-
organized.
if you
But
could hand-
I would expect a municipality, because this is in violation of this settlement agreement
No, you're absolutely right.
and the seismic testing. And this gentleman had every opportunity to step out onto Route 130, but he continued to trespass the entire length of the property. And, I don't want it happening anywhere in our community.
No,
as
and it
far
should,
as
and it
this
should.
goes.
And we have these rules in place. I mean, rules are rules, and they have to
Okay,
be
well, I'm just going to get
followed.
organized back here. and
Just make sure I have before the meeting's over.
Oh,
then-
I'm going to get ready and give it to.
Great, and then
submit
Mr.
it.
Little, if he could set up a time with Police Chief Cole and Mr. Ratcher and figure out what our options are, because
Okay.
this can't be
Well,
tolerated.
do we have fines, are there fines that, do we have a list of fines? Do you fine these people? Or what should have happened, when I was under the impression, and I don't want to take too much more time, that when I talked to you, Mr. Little, that their activity ceased, because you mentioned that they were working on over around Plum.
He mentioned, like I said, he mentioned that they were working in the whole area going up to Armstrong County. This is the more southern part of the 200.
Well, I understand that, but on that interstellar list that you were given with all the 150-some streets or whatever, Haymaker was not on that. Forbes Road is not on that. Yet they've marked with pink flags all the way on different areas of Haymaker. And now I've got to get a surveyor to come in, because my property goes for a distance on Forbes Road of 390 feet, plus feet.
Well, we're going to look into it. I understand your frustration, and Mr. Little
And
will
they
be speaking.
were-
It's defiant
on Old
trespass,
Ramsey
and it
as
can't be
well.
tolerated.
They were on Old Ramsey as
Linda, I
well.
called you, but I didn't want to keep calling you back. I didn't leave
Oh,
it.
I had a problem with my phone, which was going to be in my report, so I'm sorry. But I did see the same truck on that Wednesday, the 24th, when I was coming up Forbes Hill, or Old Ramsey. It was like, and now I've seen the
Well,
pink
they're
things
marked.
that are
If you go on
tied.
Forbes Road, like I said, I will have a surveyor come out and measure that distance. There's one flag there, and I don't know if it's beyond the 390 feet, .28 feet of my property. They are marked on Haymaker, right above the Musser property. There's some pink flags, and there's a few more.
There's some tied at the bottom of Old Ramsey as well, on the right-hand side.
But my question is,
I'd
how
like
can
to
they be
suggest
flat-
something to any resident, that if you have somebody trespassing on your property, to call the police, because there are defiant trespass laws
Oh, I have a copy.
in regards
I
to the
have it.
police. So, but I mean, immediately, call the police. If somebody's on your property, call the
But
police.
as I said, she didn't see my car. She thought.
Okay,
it was
well,
mine.
yes, I understand that, but there are laws, and
I
if
have
they're
a copy of that.
trespassing,
Yeah.
As a matter of fact, in my.
Mrs. Woodhull, if you could just we have another speaker here, if you could just hand that all
As a matter of fact, this is what hangs
in.
in my front window.
Understood. Thank you very much. But if you could organize that, and we're going to see what we can do about it. David Mintz.
Okay. All right, good evening. Before I even ask what I was going to ask, I want to follow up just on Mrs. Woodhull's comments. I just want to confirm, does GeoKinetics, as we speak, have they applied for and received from Monroeville a permit according to the parameters of the November 22nd settlement to do seismic testing in Monroeville if given permission by a private landowner?
Not yet. They're on the cusp.
Okay, so even if Mrs. Woodhull had given them permission to be in her yard, which she certainly did not, they don't even have a permit from Monroeville to be doing it anywhere in Monroeville.
Depends on how you term the definition of operations in the agreement.
Okay, so what you're saying is, what are you saying? I was going to guess, but I want to make sure I understand what you're saying. Yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
operations is what? Seismic testing.
Okay, so are you potentially saying that maybe if a private landowner gave their permission, they could be setting up things, putting flags, deciding, measuring?
I'm offering the question. I'm offering the question. It says operations in the agreement.
What does operations include?
Well, that's exactly
Okay.
right. What does it include?
Right.
Exactly.
So we have to determine that if they may be violating by doing what Ms. Gatos saw by doing anything in Monroeville right now, if they haven't received the permit from Monroeville, if they are doing any operations,
Exactly.
right, so,
Exactly.
okay.
So it'll all be moot once they receive their permit.
Right, but if
Okay.
they haven't, why are they doing any operations? Why are they performing anything?
that's
Well, they're not,
Check
they're
into.
not doing any operations right now if you're saying seismic testing
Okay.
in and of itself.
They haven't set off the charges or done the thumper trucks, but they may be setting up for it, which is
They
part of
may be-
operations. Okay,
well,
well, I don't know the legal term of, okay, all right, so I just want to follow up on that just from what she was saying. Okay. So my question, I have several, but when, wait. Okay, I just want to make sure, okay, I just want to make sure you're ready. I am, as you all know, one of the people that you referenced earlier that was urging us to not drag our feet about having a new ordinance that's in place and modernized according to the modern operations that we're all facing. So I am one of those people, but, and I have a draft of the proposed ordinance. Certainly, when on October 10th, the council voted to change the Monroeville use table from conditional use for the oil and gas drilling in all zones to just M2 industrial, that was a first step that was incredibly important, and we thought, that part has been taken care of, and that what we were urging to be done, with some urgency, what we thought, I think a lot of us thought, or maybe all of us, was to update all the parameters, all the regulations, the setbacks, everything else that have to do with the oil and gas drilling, already having it in place as a conditional use in M2. Certainly, I don't think there was any implication by any of us that by urgency was to drastically change the vote of October 10th by the council to restrict it to M2 industrial. to take it out of M2 industrial and change it to something called S1 conservancy that we're all aware of now. I mean, the last time I spoke here, I didn't get a chance to read that till the day after because that's when the ordinance, the proposed ordinance became public. And that's a drastic difference. That's not, I think what we all thought was we're going to get this in order. Now that it's an M2, we're going to tell them exactly what the setbacks are and what all the parameters are, what are our emergency plans for if there's a blowout, what is our local EMS and police and firemen, what is their training going to be, what's their responsibility, all the details that have to do with it being restricted to M2. In no way implied that anybody was requesting it to be changed from M2 to S1. So I'm going to ask, I'm not sure that Mr. Wright got an answer why. What was the impetus? What was the motivation? Who did somebody sponsor? Why was it changed from M2 to S1? Who changed it and why?
Well, first of all, since I did the drafting of the document, I physically changed it.
Okay.
First of all, and I want to make clear, we have a district called S in Monroeville.
Right.
That we have in many places.
You're talking about S1?
S Conservancy, no, S Conservancy.
Okay.
This is not S Conservancy.
Right, I know that.
This
Right,
is
right.
S1.
Right, exactly.
S1 is located one place.
Right.
It's essentially part of the sanitary landfill
Yes.
up there.
Yes.
The landfill has actually morphed into quite a bigger area than that.
Okay.
The thought behind it in discussions was?
I'm sorry to interrupt, the discussions
Internally.
internally with the people on
Internally.
council. You are all part of that discussion.
Well, more so the staff discussions.
Okay.
Okay. The idea was, we saw some benefits, and I'm not going to sit here and name every name of people.
Sure, okay.
I'm the one that put it in
Right,
there.
okay.
You can blame me for it.
Okay. Well, I'm just,
No, please take your turn. So the point is that we saw some advantages. One of the things that you have with these things that's difficult and impactful is truck traffic. This same issue was debated 20, 25, 30 years ago regarding the sanitary landfill. And so the thought is that the landfill has its own dedicated roadway up there. We provide an area for people to drill up there. They can go up there. There are some reasonable buffers up there in terms of space and so forth. There's a dedicated roadway to go up there. Would keep it out of other places, because one of the things that we also heard was, and I'm not holding anybody to this, but when everybody looked and saw on the map where the M2 areas were, they said, some people said, hey, that's really just right over the hill from my house.
Right.
So now, the truth of the matter is, no matter where you put this thing, it's going to be near somebody's house. That's the
Exactly.
unfortunate.
right, exactly, unfortunately.
And so that's how it happened. I mean, it
Right.
wasn't any, organized idea or whatever. It was just through discussions, okay, where could we put it? It would have less impact, other than where it was going to be. The other thing is, a couple of the M districts are pretty narrow. So you really, if you have any kind of setbacks, you get to a point where there's no room to put it. The district's so narrow. If you have like 1,000-foot setback on either side,
Right.
you might only have 2,000 feet. So right off the bat, that you can't even really put it in that
Now,
M district.
Okay, I understand that point.
Yeah.
Actually, that's an interesting point for me to follow up on, is it Monroeville Council's or Monroeville Municipality's responsibility to allow the conditional use of this fracking in a zone that makes it in a zone that's more amenable? And essentially, if M2 happens to have a very narrow area and setbacks will make it more difficult, well, so be it. What I'm saying, are we...
You get back to
Yeah.
this basic concept in zoning, that if you design a zoning ordinance, and you put a particular use in a particular zone, and you
Right.
put requirements on that use, that when the requirements are applied,
Right.
essentially somebody really can't do it. You have what's called an exclusionary ordinance.
Right. So we were trying to go up to the line without going over it. I understand what you're saying.
Exactly, yeah, and which is always the challenge.
Right. Now, the
Yeah.
setbacks, as you say it, and I just want to, this was an important thing I wanted to ask as well, is with any of the rules that we are going to put in, wherever it may be, and actually, I'm not sure I quite understood after Mr. Wright, if the area that you're talking about in S1 is privately owned or municipality owned. Do we know that, is all of S1 part municipality? Do we even know?
I don't personally know that.
Somebody has
no,
to know that, though.
No.
I mean-
I think probably a large majority of it is privately owned.
Okay.
Because I think originally it was intended to encompass the landfill footprint from some time ago.
Okay. When you did determine setbacks in the proposed ordinance, what was the criteria you used? Where did the numbers come from? Were they essentially just like, well, this sounds good? I mean, I'm not trying to impugn. What I'm saying is, like, where did it come from? Did it come from scientific studies, from University of Maryland, let's say, which we know about, have been done, or where did they come from?
No,
I mean, these are just
no,
out of the air.
we're
Yeah.
aware of what generally the minimums are. We felt we wanted to have more than the minimums,
Right.
but then the question becomes, okay, when we look at that area up there that I think is somewhere between, I think, 135 and 150 acres,
Mm-hmm.
when do we get, and Mr. Yugas and I discussed this, when do we get to a point where we're setting up setbacks so that somebody can come in and make an argument, hey, you know what? There's nowhere in there that I can.
So the exclusionary
put a
thing
well
that you were
pad.
talking about.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
essentially, so that brings up a good point then. Let's say that scientifically, for the health and welfare of the citizens of Monroeville, whether they be near S1 or M2, whatever it may be, there's been scientific studies done by professionals who say that these setbacks are the best science we have for the health of people. And it just happens to be that whether it be M2 or S1, these two zones, or any zone in Monroeville, just doesn't happen to fit it because we're not rural, because we're not mostly rural. I mean, we're a suburban community, a bedroom community. What if it happens to be that none of our zones fit the scientific best practices for the health and welfare, which we're supposed to be worried about primarily and absolutely, just doesn't fit. So that what's happening is, it sounds like if we say a setback of 1,000, but scientifically they say it should be a minimum of 2,000. When you said minimums, I'm not sure what you said minimums were, but minimums based on science. Let's say it should be 2,000 feet, and neither S1 or M2 fits that, just because of the shape, the size, everything that we've been talking about. Well, then maybe that's just the way it is in Monroeville, and we're not Greene County, and we're not Fayette County, and we're not Center County and Tioga County. Maybe we're just not a place in Monroeville where, if we're going to meet the best health practices of the people of this community, that this is going to work at all. And do we have to take it, let's say a scientific study said 2,000 feet that I keep saying, what if the only way that we're not being exclusionary, and maybe we'll lose in court, is to reduce it to 1,000 feet? Well, then aren't we just pandering to the industry rather than protecting the people? Because
Well, I think
our
it all
community
depends
just doesn't fit.
there are studies that say 500 feet.
Well,
There are studies that say 2,000 feet. It all depends whose study it
Right,
is.
now, that's really important, but I can give you, and just from the research that we've done, the people that did certain scientific studies at universities that tell us the health studies that they've done. If I can find out who said it was 500 or 1,000, I mean, who is, a study can be done. I could do a study, right? I mean,
Right.
David Mintz, I could go out and say, you know what, I decided, I don't think it'll be too noisy. I don't think there'll be too much dust. I don't think there'll be too much pollution. My study, based on my work, says 500 feet. But what qualifications do I have to give that to the council, right? I want to know the qualifications if somebody said it was 500 or 1,000. What was that study? Who was it? I want to vet them. I can give you studies that by scientists that you can vet, you can look at and say, well, they're professionals that are respected in their community. What if the source was the oil and gas industry that said 500 feet? I mean, are we going to say, well, okay.
I think actually the 500 came from the DEP.
Okay, well, I don't know that, but we'd have to sit down and look at it. I know I'm out of time, but what I'm saying is
No, you're raising a valid point.
Okay, so everything I said, I just want to make sure that we're doing what's best for Monroeville, and if it just happens to be, I think that's my final point that I just want to reiterate, if it happens to be that our zones are just not right for this, according to what's best for the people here, then that's the way it turns out, because we're not that kind of space. Go down to the city of Pittsburgh. If you went to Oakland or Squirrel Hill, where could they put a fracking well that would fit anybody's criteria of any common sense, right? Well, we're not exactly Oakland or Squirrel Hill, but we're not exactly Greene County either.
You're right.
You know what I mean?
Well, and I know you know this,
Yeah.
but I encourage you and everybody making comments
Yeah.
tonight to also make them at the Planning Commission, because the
Okay.
Planning Commission ultimately is charged
Sure.
with giving council a bunch of recommendations.
Okay, well, I'd be happy to do that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
All right, well, thank you
Thank
very
you,
much.
David.
Thank you very much.
Lois Drumheller?
Nick, I don't want to take away from my 5 minutes.
I won't stop the clock, or start the clock yet.
Well, because Tuesday of this week, Sustainable Monroeville, of which I am a founding member, sent electronically our official statement so that it could be distributed amongst the Planning Commission and members
I
of
received
council.
it and reviewed it.
Has anybody the need to see this in writing? I brought copies. No extra copies, okay. Well, they're certainly going to be set right along here.
Okay, thanks, Lois. The floor is
You're
yours.
welcome. Yeah, I'm Lois Heller, and I'm a founding member of Sustainable Monroeville. Our organization encourages people to embrace the practice of thinking globally by promoting things like sustainable land use, public policies at the federal, state, and certainly the local levels. Our grassroots group has no membership dues. It's not a 501c3. It was founded in 2009 by as a nonpartisan group with interest in fostering sustainability. Dr. Alyssa Beck, who had a conflicting appointment tonight, leads our meetings every month, the first Monday of the month, and that's at the library. So, as I was saying, this Tuesday we electronically delivered to council via municipal manager Mr. Little our official comments and recommendations in an ordinance proposing to amend zoning for oil and gas. This paper's backed on evidence. I was pulling out one of the pieces here, adequacy of current state setbacks, peer review journals, that quite interesting, quite a read. And so things that are derived from those types of studies for air quality, well setback, distance analysis, incidents of gas well blowouts, emergency management when high volume, we're going to refer to this as high volume horizontal fracking, or HVFE. I'm just going to say fracking, okay? Long word. And its effect on the health and safety issues. And these are well documented in there. So I encourage you, it might have been too long of a read between the time that you got it and now, but please read it, because these things are empirical evidence that are really what the courts are issuing themselves over, whether or not they will do something that it currently is the law of the land, which is Robinson versus the Commonwealth. And when I was sitting on council in 2012, I think I did a presentation when H.R. 1950 was going to come up, and it became Act 13. So we certainly talked about setbacks there. It was a PowerPoint, looked at it, probably bored a lot of people, but it was actually something that some people, 3 at least, on this council, signed an amicus to be a friend of the court in support of it. So by giving you the document that we did, we allowed trying to catch you up of what's been active in the court system, the majority opinion by the Supreme Court in Pennsylvania on the conditions under which fracking are now done. You have in that document, what the Supreme Court said. And that Act 13 was challenged in the courts by Robinson Township, as well as some important cases which were argued yesterday in Pittsburgh. Which was the Allegheny Township Zoning Hearing Board. And so this all has to do with methods and the people's right to clean air, pure water, preservation of natural, scenic, historic, aesthetic values of the environment. And this is what is guaranteed under Article 1, Section 27 of PA's Constitution. And so we're presenting that to you in the best interest of compatible land use. And the fact that municipalities have to, by law, set aside zoning districts for oil and gas under Act 13, it's stressful. Have to do it. It's by law. But where we do it and how we do it is vital for the health, welfare, and safety under the law. That is the law. That's the law of the land. So we have recommendations you may have read, but I'm going to announce them publicly here, that Monroeville should not consider an oil and gas zoning change at this time, because we feel that fracking should not be permitted under any circumstance in the S1 Special Conservancy zoning district. We feel that council should either vote to table or to say no on any legislation to remove fracking from the M2 zoning district and allowing its use in the S1 Special District. We feel that council should delay any action with regard to zoning amendments pertaining to fracking until the Pennsylvania Supreme Court has ruled, these are the important ones right now, Gorseline versus the Board of Supervisors of Fairfield Township, and Frederick versus Allegheny County Township Zoning Hearing Board. That was, the arguments were heard yesterday on that in Pittsburgh. We feel that council should continue to only permit as a conditional use exception fracking industrial operations in the M2 industrial zone. We feel council should immediately, and this is important, begin a process, as this is tabled, to develop and enact legislation to enumerate appropriate conditions, which was the attempt that I was reading in this ordinance, based on the best practices. Best practices could help that. That document's going to go a long way into helping that. We would also be remiss if we did not express sincere thank yous to you and appreciation to this council for its adopting the Seismic Survey Zoning Code Amendment that Sustainable Monroeville supported in 2017. And then in October, this council corrected the oversight of that outdated ordinance allowing oil and gas operations as a conditional use in all districts. At that time, council corrected this by relegating oil and gas as a conditional use where it is now and where it should stay as an M2 industrial use. We remain hopeful that this council will continue to look to the health, welfare, safety of the people of Monroeville and take appropriate action to preserve the character of our community that makes it a desirable place to live, work, and pursue our happiness. Beginning to tell you some things, though, that I noticed here. You know this, what you were talking about here, and I can't help segue here because this is the, I'm sorry, I'm just going to have to, the settlement agreement. In addition to the notice to be provided to individual property owners required in subsection A, which was before that, Geokinetics shall provide such notice information to the municipality so that the municipality may make such information available to the general public via social media, cable television, and conspicuous posting of the affected roadways. There it is. You have to enforce it.
Absolutely. And we determined that, like I said, Mr. Little's going to meet with staff and we're going to figure out the best way to approach this.
Yeah. And that's good. That's really good. It's also distressing to see that after the Planning Commission, because, I came up in front of the Planning Commission, after they decided to table the vote to recommend the ordinance that has nonetheless come before you after another month, this is because, as they stated to us, planning did not have enough information. Okay. It's no surprise to see why they said that, as they were completely left out of the process. And I think this is unprecedented. The process should start with planning. And Planning Commission had already started this process. They started it years ago when I was on council. They, in 2015, were to the point where this was ready to be going before the public in a hearing. It may not have been complete then, but you had a complete zoning ordinance, not just oil and gas. I have questions, and I'm addressing them per the rule to you, through you, Mr. Mayor. Did this ordinance process come from the Planning Commission? I think I heard some discussion on this. Did the process that you have before you come before the Planning Commission?
Yeah, then they tabled it.
Was that originated with them? Did that originate?
No,
with them?
we originated this publicly in the fall.
I heard a we. Mr. Ratcher said we decided. I'd like to know who we are.
No, whenever the seismic testing issue came up in the fall is when we decided to work on that ordinance and then follow up with a oil and gas ordinance at the same time. And this was all discussed publicly here.
Are you talking about the 2015, or are you talking about the
No, 17.
Okay.
In the fall, October.
Yeah. But this, what has come up since the October change to M2 is what I'm talking about. The process to develop the criteria.
We asked the attorney, the solicitor, Mr. Ratcher, to develop and update our current oil and gas ordinance, which is very outdated, and to come up with one specific to the current standards of oil and gas discovery with what you say fracking, and that is to be delivered to us, and then it goes through the process of the Planning Commission. They have tabled it. We are waiting, and it's going to go back to them, and then it'll come back to council.
Well, the process normally starts with the Planning Commission. In fact, the process had been going on in 2015. I see you shaking your head, Mr. Etcher. The process to deliver a zoning ordinance update from the, I agree, very outdated 84?
It was later than that.
Last
It's
time?
pretty old.
Okay, it was pretty old. The process to come up with that, to renew that, to revamp it, to cover all areas, was about to come up to a public hearing in 2015. There were committees, there were consultants hired. I'm asking about that process.
Well, a couple things. Your points are well taken, and I appreciate them. Council has Sustainable Monroeville's stance on it, the document that you read through. We are not voting on this ordinance on Tuesday. It is going to be tabled. We're going to have more time to discuss this, and that's what we want. We really want to have public input for these kind of things, because some really good points are being brought up here tonight, and these are the kind of things we want to apply to our ordinance. But as far as talking about 2015, 2016, I'm more interested in this ordinance, what we're doing, how we're going to get it done. We have residents that really want an oil and gas ordinance to be passed and updated. Now we're hearing that some that want to hold off on one right now. Council wants to do the best thing for the community, of course.
Yeah.
So as far as, trying to figure out the history of it, I don't believe that's the best use of time right now. But we do want to work on this current ordinance, and where it's at right now is it's going to go back to the Planning Commission. They're going to figure out if it's the best use of zoning and make that call. Then it'll come back to our body to be voted on for or against, or to be tabled, as you suggested.
That's excellent. The Home Rule Charter had a committee that worked for a long time. If you look out there, you don't want to duplicate your services. Years ago, I attended something that was being held. Do you recognize this chart?
I don't,
Yeah.
but
This
if you
is
could
an
maybe
algorithm, okay? This is an algorithm.
hand that in for us,
Okay.
that'd be great.
And
We
this
do
is
have a lot
just-
of other speakers that we want to give time for.
I'm going
but
to leave
just-
this with you.
Thank you.
Yeah,
And just to be
and-
clear, though, we are not voting on this evening. We're not voting on this on Tuesday. There'll be ample opportunities for people to discuss. We just want to have everybody have ample time to discuss and have their comments for this evening at Citizens Night. But your points are well taken,
Right.
and I appreciate your input.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Lois, did you sign in?
She did.
Okay, thanks.
Madeline Hunt, or I'm sorry, Madeline Havrilla. If you could hand that to Sharon, then we'll get it. Thank you so much.
When can I expect to hear from you?
Early next week.
Thank you very much.
Good evening. I signed that. Do I need to sign here
Nope,
also?
you're good. We got you.
Okay.
If you just state your name for the record, please.
Sure, it's Madeline Havrilla. I live on, in
You just say you're a Monroeville resident.
I'm a Monroeville resident who lives on Boyd Hill, which is 2 streets down from where the proposed ordinance zoning change is being proposed. I'm here to support the suggestions of Sustainable Monroeville that it be maintained as it was written in October in the M2 industrial section. So I categorically do not think it should be in the middle of our residential area. We know that the waste management has morphed. We've suffered the consequences of their morphing for the change in water in our property and the change in traffic, and we know that has been disastrous up there, so we can't imagine what you would do putting a oil pad up there, so it's just not a good fit for it. In thinking about this, I was trying to remember, I don't know if any of you remember this lovely article about Diane Banks. She was up in Monroeville Residence. Last year, in May, you celebrated Mellon Plan and Boyd Hill, and the establishment of that area that was a housing center for the air brake. My husband's family has lived up there for 80 years, so he's seen that property change. He knows the history of that property. And our home actually went on the books in 1898, so it predated Mellon Plan. I'm a fairly new resident of Monroeville. I've only been here 20 years. I've been active, a lot of acquaintances, and I contacted people about what they knew about this in the last week or so, and none of them were aware of where this was being proposed. So I'm asking that when you suggest to do public hearings, the outreach that you're doing is not reaching anyone. I went to the Planning Commission. I made my concerns known there. But I'm asking for you to look for another method besides just your website, which people do not rely on for information. There was an article in the newspaper, it never mentioned Mellon Plan, Boyd Hill, Pioneer Park, the neighborhoods, Overlook Park. I mean, the places that are being affected by this. I don't know where Mr. Ratcher, the solicitor, lives. I've heard you have referred to our area as a devastated area. It is not. It's a vibrant, active community.
Excuse me?
Yes.
You and I had that discussion. I told you there was no way that I
Well-
believed that Mr. Little would have ever
I
used
didn't
that
know, I didn't
term.
totally hear what she said.
That you referred to it as devastated because of the landfill being there, is what I was referring to.
I told you I
said,
did not
I'm
believe
sorry,
that.
I said what?
That it was a devastated area
To
because
whom
of
did
the
I say that?
landfill.
Same question I asked.
Well, I'm not going to say. She can disclose that herself. But I know that the
Okay.
Planning Commission, they also said it was a good placement because of the waste management, that it was already a depressed or devastated area, okay? It is not. I contacted the pastor over at AME Church, Bethel AME Church, it's right over the hill there, very active community. I'm going to try to go door to door. I haven't been able to because of the cold weather and my health conditions. But you need to find a way, when you say you're going to have a public hearing about making this kind of a change in a neighborhood, I want to ask you how you're going to do that. How do you propose? This is not working.
Well,
This isn't.
we advertise it in the newspaper.
Do you use the words Mellon Plan, Boyd Hill, Pioneer Park,
We
Thomas?
put the address for any kind of development or zoning, we put the address of where it's at.
I haven't seen that. Have you done it yet?
If it was advertised, it would have had the address, so that's there, and then we also have,
Where was it at? You advertised it in the Times Express back in that little section in the
no, in the Post-Gazette,
Tribune Review.
in the
Tribune Review.
And it wasn't given an address because it's a proposed ordinance.
So it wasn't given an address.
Okay, so the zone,
Right, it's a proposed ordinance. It was advertised as such.
okay,
And
as
it
any other
didn't say
ordinance.
1-1, I'm sure.
Well, I mean, and then, yeah, Mr. Hughes brings up a good point, and stand corrected. I mean, any kind of ordinance that would impact the whole municipality, I mean, you can't put just an address.
It's not the whole municipality that's being impacted by it. It's Ward 1.
I would disagree. I think that it would impact the entire municipality.
Well, maybe more so Ward 1 if it's happening right in the middle of it, right over their mines and their mine shafts, and, you know, it's right there in our neighborhood.
Can I ask a question? Is it, they can't do a well if the landfill's still active, is that correct? Because I know there's methane issues and everything else up there.
There's also mines up there, Mr.
Yeah,
Duncan.
I mean, how could
can
they
you
put a
build
well in if the
there's mines there?
landfill's still active? You know, currently. I'd like to see it become a golf course like they did in
Thank you,
Cranberry.
that's what it was promised, I think, but that never.
That was certainly discussed.
It was, yeah, years ago, they discussed a golf course up there. Please leave it in the industrial section where it belongs. And if it's too restrictive, oh well. You know, there's all kinds of drilling that they can do. They don't have to frack, they don't have to do an injection well. And I don't think Waste Management should be accepting any debris from any of these other sites around the western Pennsylvania either, which has also been proposed. So,
Your
thank
points
you
are
for
well
your
taken.
time.
Thank you.
And thank you for the seismic. I was up here for that, and I appreciate it.
Thanks for coming out.
That is all who I have up here who have signed in, but if anyone else?
Yes, I will.
Sir, if you could just please sign in and just state your name for the
I
record.
definitely will, sir. My name is Robert Serafini. I'm a Monroeville resident. I'm going to change the whole tenure of what everybody said here. I just want to say thank you to Mike Adams and all his crew for the hell of a good job they've done in this bad weather we've had. That's all I have to say.
Hallelujah.
Well done.
That's one thing everyone can agree on. Thank you. Sir, if you could sign in and state your name for the record, please.
The sheet,
There's an extra one.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, thank you.
My name is Tom Henningsen. I'm a resident of Monroeville.
Sir, you have to be near the microphone.
Tom, can you speak into the mic, please?
Pick one of the microphones.
Okay,
Yeah.
let's see if we can center this map here first.
Joe, if you could pick up the camera there
It's
Slide it
not
on.
going to be.
towards you.
There you go.
There we go.
A little bit closer to yourself, actually. There we go.
That's good.
Not, not a very good. Okay. I was really taken back when I saw the ordinance that is being proposed and the idea that you would allow wells in conservancy-zoned areas. The reason the dump is zoned, excuse me, is zoned conservancy is because there's an anticipation that when the dump is filled up, it can be turned into a green area. That has happened in a number of places across the country, things like golf courses, athletic fields, and so on. So I started looking to see what could possibly be the reason that Monroeville might want to do that. And of course, the big boy in this area is Huntley and Huntley. In August, Huntley came at the Citizens' Night meeting. Huntley came before this board, and Dr. Magini stated that he has no intention of ever drilling a well in Monroeville because there's a concern for Marcellus drilling. The interesting, and what I'm quoting from here is the minutes from that meeting, and about 6 or 7 times during that meeting, Mr. Magini made the same statement. It's interesting that contrasts very strongly with what Huntley has been doing. This map here comes from an organization called Frac Tracker Alliance. This is a group of people that keep track of, as well as they can, who owns the gas drilling rights. And they say it's very difficult to find out who owns it because most of that is obscure. But using that map, I was able to look up 15 leases that Huntley has. And the biggest one is the Chambers landfill. It's 389 acres. Adjacent to that, they also have the Westland Cemetery for 158 acres. And if you can see this map, and I realize it's rather difficult, but this is a landfill here. And this is also the area where Huntley owns the gas rights. This is the cemetery area, and this is where they own the gas rights. And then a number of these areas around here are also owned by Huntley. So the ones we can see, these 15 sites, total 759 acres. In addition to that, they have a substantial similar-sized properties across the border in our neighboring community here. My point is this, that in spite of what Mr. Magini is saying, Huntley has a very strong financial interest to see that landfill as a site where you can put a well in. And I can't escape the conclusion that that has something to do with why it's appearing in the current ordinance. I think if you vote for the ordinance in the form it is right now, I feel fairly sure you're going to have a substantial industrial facility right in the landfill. And I don't think they have to vote to wait for the landfill to close. They can drill right through that.
The map you have there, are all the red items, they're all owned by Huntley and Huntley, the gas rights? Is that what you're
No,
saying?
No, they are not.
What are the,
The majority, there are some other ones.
Those are red
What-
items. What are those red
what are the red items, if you could explain?
The red items, the way this, as I said, this comes from the Frac Tracker Alliance. These people are trying very hard to find out who owns what.
Okay.
And it's not easy information to get to because of the way it's organized. When they are able to do it, this chart is organized in such a way that you can put your pointer on that and then see who owns that property. So if I point to this one as an example and look that up, I see that this is a lease that has been transferred to Huntley. I believe that one is in 2012, 2013. They're all fairly recent.
Are the red items indicating something in particular?
Each one here that you see in red is a lease.
It's already been leased, okay.
Well, it isn't saying that the other areas have not been leased.
Does leasing give you mineral rights?
Apparently they bought them.
What was the question?
I'm sorry, I was mumbling, but if I lease a piece of property, does that necessarily give me the mineral rights or the rights for?
It depends on what you're leasing. But specifically,
Yeah.
specifically, these are gas leases. The
Oh,
Supreme,
they're gas leases.
yeah, the Supreme Court ruled recently.
So it's not property lease, it's
No, it has
the
nothing
mineral.
to do with the surface. It doesn't affect the
Oh,
property,
okay.
except that it usually gives you surface access. You know, the advice has been given here, if a landman shows up at your doorstep says no, you really can't do that if they already own the leases below it, because typically those leases give you surface access. So,
Thanks for the clarification there.
so what you're looking at here is not mineral rights, but it's specifically gas leases. Gas and
down a little bit, we'll see the map better.
Yeah, if you could slide the map towards
Toward
you.
Slide it down towards you, sir.
Keep
Go
going.
ahead.
There you go.
Okay, that's better. Thank you.
Okay.
Mayor, excuse me, Tom, I'm under the impression that in order for them to decide to drill a well in a certain area in Monroeville, they have to come to us for a permit. Is that correct? Come to the municipality for a permit.
That is correct.
So therefore, if we don't issue the permit, they can't drill.
Yeah, but we have the agreement, Mr. Wilson, that if they meet all the criteria, that we issue the permit. That's what the agreement is for.
Okay.
It's a conditional use, but if you
No, I'm sorry, Tom, he's talking about seismic testing. You're talking about drilling. Okay?
I was talking about drilling.
He was talking
Oh, you were talking about drilling.
Yeah.
Different ballgame. I'm sorry. I thought you were talking about
Okay.
seismic testing. All right.
So where does this stand?
Well, as far as a permit for oil and drilling, I don't know how that permit, all I know is the DEP would regulate a lot of that. That's about all I do know.
But it still has to come to the municipality.
I would
for
imagine, yes, I would
consideration.
imagine it does. I'm not 100% sure of that, okay? I mean, because the DEP does regulate a lot of that.
Okay. I think we should,
I mean, what kind of
Into
permit
that.
we would give, I don't
Yeah.
know. What we would inspect, I don't know. Setbacks, with
Yeah.
respect to zoning, is about all I know that we could regulate as far as operations and things of that nature, as far as bonding the roads, as far as the routes they could take, we could regulate that. But as far as, and obviously where it takes place because of zoning, which is what we're talking about now, but other than that, we can't regulate their operations, not that I'm aware of.
okay, thanks.
I think the point that people have been making here is that if you zone the landfill so that a gas well can be installed there, and you make it a conditional use, you make it very difficult at a later time to say, no, you can't do that. Where if it's not zoned, as you have in the current ordinance, only M2, there's no way that a well can be put in that area.
What is that zone today? The landfill?
S1.
S1. Thank you.
See, it's zoned conservancy, and conservancy is a very protective type of thing. It's very limited, the activities you can do, And you could say, well, a landfill is a very torn-up area. But the reason it's zoned that way is because there's anticipation that as it finishes its operations, it'll be turned into a green area. But if you now zone this so you can put a gas well in there, you can forget about that. That's
Right. Understood. And also, too, I mean, to that point, though, even if no matter what the ordinance would say, whether we restrict it in this zone or that zone, there would still be nothing to prevent an individual or a company that owns the mineral rights to a property to extract the gas underneath it from a different site. You're pointing to that map across the border where there's property. Even if we didn't allow them to go in S1, they could go in a neighboring community and go underneath to the property if they own those mineral rights, to your point.
And there's a gentleman in the audience right now that can give you much more information about this, and I think he should be heard. Because he's pointing out that what appears to be happening in Allegheny County is that well sites are being selected that will pretty much cover the whole area. But you as a municipality are only seeing a small piece of it at the time. What he's calling for is there needs to be an overall planning for the entire area. As an example, if you choose to put a gas well into the landfill, you have to ask the question, where are the pipelines going to go that are going to remove this material? And where's the waste material going to be stored or transported? How about the water? I'm in favor of seeing gas extraction. I think it's a good supplement to what we like to call the green energy. The green energy we have right now is intermittent, and you need a source that you can start up quickly, like a gas turbine, and get it going, fill in the gaps. But we have an excess capacity of gas in the country. There's not a current need for this to be developed today. And these gas wells are bad neighbors, and there's an increasing scientific evidence that people's health are being affected and distances that are very substantial away from areas like this. In addition to that, of course, Allegheny County already has an air pollution problem.
Well, thank you for your comments. They're very well taken.
I think this should all go to planning as well. I think everyone that spoke tonight should go before the planning commission again.
So. Also, planning commission will be offered, the minutes from these meetings as
Right.
well, so the members will have this information. And once again, it'll be council's decision. Thank you.
Thanks, Tom.
It'll be council's decision on Tuesday to hopefully table this item. However, another option for council would be to withdraw the ordinance totally and go back to the drawing board and discuss this further. So that's something else we could consider on Tuesday. But I want to assure the community that we will not be voting for this ordinance on Tuesday.
Either way.
Either way, so just to be clear on that.
Mayor, may I make a comment?
Yes, Mr. Harvey.
I've never seen a council so for the public since I've been coming up here. However, I want to run down this really quick. Geokinetics came in here to do seismic testing and applied for a permit because we didn't have an ordinance in place. We had to go sit down with them before the courts made a ruling that we didn't like and work something out that was kind of acceptable between us and them, because we would have kind of got our clocks cleaned in court because we didn't have an ordinance. So the public came up and also expressed their concern, we don't have a drilling or fracking ordinance that's up to date. So to prevent that happening again, Mr. Ratcher puts together an ordinance that we didn't have any intentions of passing without the public comment, but we got it on the books, so we didn't have to go to court again to work out a deal because we didn't have an ordinance. Now people seem to be coming up and complaining about it, and I want you to be aware, and also complaining that it didn't go to planning first. Well, we tried to get it on the books, so some drilling company didn't come in without us having an ordinance in place, and here we go again. So we put an ordinance in place reasonably fast. that I agree with most of you that needs combed. We need to get it off to planning and start the process over. But we wanted to get the ordinance on the books at your request, so the same thing didn't happen with geokinetics, and we're down there working on a deal with the judge. And I think that's what happened, and I don't want everybody to forget that. We had no intentions of it all going and passing without getting more input, but we wanted to get it on the books, because I even asked Mr. Ratcher, does it matter if it's on the books and passed? He said, no, as long as it's there. So he did what council and I think you requested, was we got something on the books so some drilling company couldn't come in here with no ordinance in place and just take us to court and, quite frankly, beat us. That's the way I remember it. Does anybody?
We're updating the ordinance.
I just wanted to explain that.
That's accurate. Miss, if you could state your name for the record and sign in.
I'm Adrienne Weiss. I signed this already. I just want to follow up with what Lois was saying about Sustainable Monroeville and the document that was sent to everyone. You probably haven't had a chance to read it yet, but on page 7, where it talks about the setback and the health issues that come with these huge derricks that are put on well pads, I have a study that was named in this document that Sustainable Monroeville put together, this Maryland study, and I don't know if you have a camera on that.
There we go.
Yep.
Okay. So the MarcellusHealth.org website and this Maryland study is listed in the Sustainable Monroeville document they sent you. And I would just read from this one PowerPoint slide. The impact assessment is based on available data from other states with ongoing UNGDP, which stands for Unconventional Natural Gas Development and Production, regarding exposure and health outcomes on epidemiologic and toxicologic data from other contexts that are relevant to potential unconventional natural gas development and production related exposures. So when you had things settled in the minds of residents that it was going to be an M2 back in the fall, and then we see the draft that Mr. Ratcher put up on the website for Monroeville, and it said S1, I think for myself, it was like a bait and switch. And it just didn't fly with me. And Sustainable Monroeville wants you to really read this document and understand what you're doing when you do vote. Thank you.
Thanks for your input. I'll leave the floor open for public comment. You already had your opportunity, Jay. I'm sorry. Tuesday, come back.
I just need
Hey.
to ask a question.
Yes, sir?
Do
You
you
did-
allow anyone who is not a resident to speak?
This is for residents only. Thank you for asking. Any residents would like to address council?
I just have 2 questions.
Mr. Wright, if you could just, you already had your time. If you would,
But I
please, you
didn't
could
take
see me
5
after.
minutes, sir. I only took 3.5.
You had your
So I still have a minute
time.
and a half to go. I counted like you did.
Your time was afforded earlier. I'd be happy to talk to you after the meeting.
Okay, I have a
Or-
question. I just want to ask somebody.
Sir,
I've
I'm not,
asked this
I'm
of
not, no,
everybody
Jay,
in the borough.
Mr. Wright, I'm going to ask you kindly, please, to sit down. You had your time. Thank you very much.
I'll meet you in the newspaper, Nick. Thank you.
If any Monroeville resident would like their time to get up and speak, I'd like to close that portion of the meeting. Moving over to our agenda-setting meeting. We have an executive session announcement. Council conducted an executive session for personnel and litigation reasons prior to Citizens Night, Thursday, February 8th, beginning at 6:15 until 7 p.m. Council legislative action, if any, shall be taken at the February 13th council meeting. We have our minutes in front of us. We have our reorganization meeting of January 2nd, 2018, our Citizens Night meeting of January 4th, 2018, council work session of January 4th, 2018, and our regular council meeting of January 9th, 2018. Any additions or corrections, council? None. Seeing none, we have our reports of the tax collections. Any questions or comments, council?
Can we please listen to the meeting up here, not back there?
Yeah.
List of bills and budget transfers. Mr. Wilson, we'll start with you this evening. Do you have any questions about the
No,
list of
thank you.
bills? Mr. Duncan.
I have none, Mayor.
Mr. Arsenko.
I have none, Mayor.
Mr. Harvey.
None.
Mr. Poach.
No, sir.
Mrs. Gatos.
Nothing, sir.
And payroll. Any questions or comments? And moving over to our consent agenda, we have some old business, Gateway School District. Mr. Little.
Okay, item number 1 is Gateway School District applicant is requesting rezoning of property from R1, one-family residential, to C2 business commercial. The property address is 4450 Old William Penn Highway and known as Allegheny County Lot and Block Number 855N105, and approximately 26 acres. We have a letter, the council, I think it came in late. I do not think council has a copy of that unless you do. I think you
Is
do.
this it?
I think you do have it. I'm sorry, I take
Yeah,
that back.
yeah,
It's there.
we have it.
Okay, they're requesting tabling this again until the March council meeting.
Yes, Mr. Little, if I could just elaborate on that a little bit. We had an intergovernmental meeting last week with 2 members of council. I was in attendance, and also 4 members of the school board, and we discussed this at length. And what the school district has asked to do is to table this application, and what we would like to do is have a public intergovernmental committee meeting regarding this matter at the Gateway Auditorium. We're working on the date with that. We'll have that announced at our Tuesday meeting. It's more than likely, it's not set in stone yet, but it's more than likely on Tuesday, February 27th. But we will be announcing that publicly at our Tuesday meeting. We'll advertise it on our website and our television station. The Gateway School District will also be advertising that as well, but it'll be a joint intergovernmental committee meeting, a public meeting to discuss this further, so we can just have everybody to have enough time to fully understand what the school district is looking to do and why they're looking to do it, and also to give the public an opportunity to discuss this matter and to bring their comments to that meeting. Once that is done, if the district decides to bring this back to our table here to be voted on, there would be another opportunity for the public to speak about this at our citizens' night prior to voting, and also our regular council meeting at the one we decide to vote on this. So there'll be ample time for everyone to discuss this, and certainly the school district will have their meetings as well, where public discussion can be brought up. But we will, once again, the intergovernmental committee meeting is going to plan a public meeting for more than likely the 27th. We will fully announce this at the Tuesday meeting, at our Tuesday meeting. So everyone, just so everyone is up to speed with what the discussions were there. But for now, on this Tuesday, this council is going to be tabling this item. We will not be voting on this rezoning on Tuesday until we get plenty of public input regarding this matter. So, Mr. Little? Next
Okay, item number 2, Zacchaeus Properties LP, Penn Monroe Shops. Applicant is requesting conditional use approval pursuant to Section 401.8 of the Monroeville zoning ordinance number 1443, as amended to permit a cut and fill operation totaling approximately 152,000 cubic yards of earth. The property is located at 3985 William Penn Highway in the C2 Business Commercial District. We also have a letter requesting this to be tabled also, which I believe is in your packet, Council.
Next item.
Okay, and item number 3 is of the same nature with Zacchaeus Properties on the 29,430 square foot retail plaza. That is also going to be tabled along with the conditional use. Okay, item number 4, Grace Life Church. Applicant is requesting rezoning of property from R2, one-family residential and S Conservancy, to C2 Business Commercial. The property address is 4745 William Penn Highway and known as Allegheny County Lot and Block Numbers 1107, A277, and 1107, A276. The area requested to be rezoned is 46.52 acres. And also, Grace Life Church has submitted a letter of tabling this also.
And moving over to our new business, we have one item.
Okay, the applicant, this is Wilco Tango Foxtrot Properties. Applicant is requesting preliminary and final subdivision approval of tax parcel 858D65 to subdivide the lot into 3 lots. Each of the proposed lots will have an acreage in excess of .5 acres. The address of the parent parcel is 2507 Haymaker Road in the R1 one-family residential zoning district. And
Good
the
evening.
applicant is here.
Good evening.
Good evening.
My name is Todd Layton, and this is the second round on this. We had already gone through the Planning Commission, and it was denied by the council. There wasn't a reason given at the time. But there was a follow-up letter, and basically there was some concerns about one of the lots having an access directly off of Haymaker Road. So we just started it all over and redid everything, and it's been approved by the Planning Commission, simple subdivision, and that's what I'm here for.
So could you just go through, just point out on the map there what you're looking to do? Joe, if you could bring up the map. And sir, if you could maybe slide that towards you. Yep, that's perfect.
I've been watching.
So there is no longer access to Haymaker?
Correct.
Other than Kaiser Lane?
Right. What's happened is Kaiser Lane is the private road, and we've created a right-of-way through one of the lots so that there will be access off of Kaiser Lane to Lot 1 and to, to Lot 3 and to Lot 2. So Lot 1 is the existing structure, which I purchased and is currently rented to a fellow that has worked for the municipality for 30 years, the water company for 30 years, and says he's going to be there forever. So
excellent.
Is that the change that's been made?
that was the only change requested, and it is the only change that was made.
And just to be clear, I'm sorry, Mr. Duncan.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Just to be clear for the audience, this is a property right at the where Haymaker and pretty much where Saunders Station meets. Kaiser Lane is a paper street. Well, I don't know if it's private.
It is.
It's a private. I'm sorry, it's a private lane. It's a private road. It's the last right-hand turn right before the branch off of Saunders Station Road. So, and the issue was before is that there was a roadway coming back onto Haymaker, another road coming onto Haymaker, but you've eliminated that.
Yes.
So now we're just keeping actually pretty much the current setup with Kaiser Lane being the access point. Mr. Hugus, any issues on your end or from your department?
I'll refer to Mr. Wielden.
Mr. Wielden?
Nope,
any issues?
everything looks good.
Very good. I'm sorry, Mr. Duncan, go ahead, please.
No, that's fine. I think you actually answered my question. The whole issue was the ingress and egress off of Haymaker, and that's been rectified.
Correct.
Wasn't
that
there
was my
also a question in regards to who's maintaining what is it, Kaiser Lane? That there's only seems to be one property owner that actually does anything to maintain that road?
So there was a question about that, yes, but it had no legality having anything to do with what we're talking
That's a
about.
private, that'd be a private one.
Okay, that's
Just
the
a
only
separate
thing, it's the
issue.
other thing that I remembered, so I didn't know if that had been actually worked out, because
Well,
I think when you were here before, you said that that would be worked out with the other property owners.
Yes, when the time comes and, once, it's not
Yeah.
done yet. But, yeah, I own a number of properties. I grew up in Monroeville, went to school with Eric. And, I bought the property because, amazingly, it's almost 2 acres of land sitting there, and it's flat. It's like a football field. And I wanted to see it get utilized, make money, and get money for the borough.
I don't see it being a problem, I just
Yeah.
wanted to make sure that the other residents there were also going to.
I can assure you, I can't talk about the other residents there, but I can assure you that I'm going to do my part.
Okay.
I always do.
That's all.
So.
Very good.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, sir.
Thank
Good luck
you.
with your project.
sir.
We'll see you on Tuesday.
All right, thank you.
Okay, Mr. Little, we're moving over to our motions. for this meeting.
Okay, motion to place a half-page advertisement in the amount of $90 in the program for the Gateway High School musical Fiddler on the Roof. Any comments, Mr. Wilson?
We've already taken care of Tom.
We went straight for the half
No,
page.
but I hear it's a great show, and I know the director of the show, so.
Okay. So half page
And he
is
said
good?
thank you, and he said
Okay,
thank
half
you.
page is good. We went right to the half page.
Yep.
We didn't
Right
do
to
the
the
eighth,
half
we didn't do the
page.
quarter.
Oh, I messed
We went
around.
right to the half
Right.
page. We were thinking about a full page. Okay, item number 2.
Well, we can change that.
A motion to authorize to advertise for a request for proposal, RFP, to provide planning consultant services for a feasibility study for a bicycle and pedestrian trail. If council remembers, this is the active Allegheny grant that we received about 3 months ago. I'm in the process of putting the RFP together, and we'll have that done before the next council meeting in March. So I'd like authorization to advertise that for a planning consultant, which is paid, that we received $45,000 for that grant.
Next.
Any questions? Okay.
Oh, very good. Resolutions?
Okay, first resolution is a resolution adopting the Penn Monroe Shops sewage planning module, which would be voted on to, this was tabled last month, I believe.
I would recommend you table it again because it
Table it
goes
again.
along with the land development application.
Okay. Tabled again. Okay, item 2 is a resolution adopting the sewage planning module for the Walnut Crossing Apartments located at 4175 Ivanhoe Drive. Council passed the development on this at last month's meeting. Item 3 is a resolution adopting the sewage planning module for the Trevini building located at 275 Center Road. And item 4 is a resolution establishing the amount of bond required to be posted by the municipal tax collector at $10 million per year for years 2018, 19, 20, and 21, and authorizing the purchase of said bond pursuant to Section 1112 of the Home Rule Charter of the Municipality of Monroeville. This bond is established after the election year, every 4 years, when a tax collector is elected. Okay, item 5 is a resolution authorizing the filing of an application for funds with the Redevelopment Authority of Allegheny County in an amount of $150,000 for the Monroeville Community Park project. This is, hopefully, if we get this, this is to augment the refurbishing of the courts, which we hopefully will have done this summer, the beginning of the summer. But this is a grant to augment that completion of that. Item 6 is a resolution authorizing the filing of an application for funds with the Redevelopment Authority of Allegheny County in the amount of $75,000 for Monroeville Evergreen Park project. This is basically for a playground structure and some other minor items at Evergreen Park. We're putting in 2 applications. Whether we get 2, 1, we don't know. Okay, but I instructed Mr. Estock to put in for both of them and bring these resolutions to council's attention.
Playground equipment at Evergreen?
Yeah, playground structure. I'm sorry, you're asking, do they have?
Is that what you're asking for that?
Correct, yeah.
Second one?
Correct.
What park, wasn't there a park that someone was going to do some work in?
Yeah, that's been done.
That's been done? Okay.
Correct. Okay, item 7, a resolution authorizing the display of various event banners at the corner of the intersection of States 22 and 48 within a right-of-way of property belonging to the Pennsylvania Department of Transportation. This is that resolution that we pass every year that PennDOT wants us to pass, where we put banners up, and the reason for passing this is to have there's an addition to it, and that addition is for the against violence, let me see if I can.
Teen dating violence.
Yeah, Teen Dating Violence Awareness Month, which will be added to that. Then we send this into PennDOT. Anytime we have somebody else that wants to put a banner up there, we're going to add it to the resolution and send it into PennDOT. Okay, and that concludes the resolutions.
Mr. Little, I'd like to refer back to C1, the ad for Fiddler on the Roof.
Yes.
I'd just like to say, if I were a rich man,
And I hear you are.
Very good. Thank you, Mr. Wilson. Ordinances, moving over to ordinances, Mr. Ratcher, please.
We have one ordinance, an ordinance of the Municipality of Monroeville amending ordinance number 1443 for the purpose of regulating and establishing standards and specific criteria for oil and gas development, drilling, and related operations, and repealing ordinance number 2430 and ordinance number 2437. Of course, this is the ordinance we've been discussing for a large part of this evening. It's available for council's action on Tuesday night, whatever that action is.
Very good. And once again, Planning Commission has tabled this. Our intent would be to, it to go back to them to receive Planning Commission's input and comments before we do make any kind of action. Also, we would like to see the input from the county, which we have not received yet. But once again, our two options for Tuesday would be to leave it tabled or to even fully remove it from the agenda and, for lack of a better term, go back to the drawing board on this. But that'll be up to council on Tuesday. So moving to our reports of municipal staff. Mr. Ratcher?
One quick item. I just want to clear up something that I think is a misconception, and that is zoning ordinance amendments are dictated by the municipality's planning code in Pennsylvania. Any person, any member of council, anyone can propose an ordinance to, or an amendment to a zoning ordinance. The planning code allows, if they do not originate with the planning commission, the planning code allows for those ordinances then to go and be reviewed by the commission in the manner that the ordinance that was prepared here went to the commission. So I just want to make it clear that the planning commission does not have exclusive jurisdiction of the creation of zoning ordinance amendments.
Understood. Mr. Little.
Okay, just a few items. The first item I have under my report is mine subsidence insurance. The Department of Environmental Protection came to our offices last week or 2 weeks ago and mentioned that they were going to be sending mailers out in 2 different batches. One, I believe, went out last Friday, informing residents about their option of purchasing mine subsidence insurance. And you would have received, Joe, if you can get a close-up of that, you would have received a, yeah, thanks, Joe. If you can get a zoom in on this. Yeah, there you go. That's probably what a lot of people received in the mail recently. I have received a few phone calls. The reason why the DEP has been sending this information out to the residents in Monroeville, as a lot of people know, is because of the plaza that has the wine and spirits store and also the dentist office and also the Five Guys burger place has had a mine subsidence event up there. And also on our website, there is also information with respect to this as far as a map and where there is mines underneath, and it may be underneath your house. However, it all depends on, too, how much cover you have over a mine, whether or not you may decide to have mine subsidence insurance. So the DEP is trying to inform citizens, to take a look and see if you would want to purchase mine subsidence insurance. And Monroeville is not the only community that has mines underneath it. It's very informative. I found it very informative, and also the information we have on the website of different cross-section illustrations of how mine subsidence occurs, and long wall mining and short wall mining. So I think it's very informative. You can go on the website and there's more information. Also, I wanted to inform the residents that this summer, and I'll be mentioning this in the ensuing months, that PennDOT is going to be working on Route 22 from approximately the Turnpike to the Murraysville borderline in repaving Route 22. So that's going to be starting in the summertime, so there is going to be some traffic disruption there. So just so everybody knows, that's going to be forthcoming this summer. When they're going to start, I don't know, but when I find out that information specifically, we'll let you know. Also, this Saturday, February the 10th, we'll be having a recycling event at the Public Works Department parking lot on Star Road. The event begins at 9 a.m. to 1 p.m., and you would have to register for the event. You can take electronics, all sorts of toxic materials, and we've had this before. I think this is maybe about our 5th event we've had, and the information is also on our website if you're looking to get rid of some electronics and also some paint and things of that nature. Okay, and that concludes my report.
Very good. Mr. Hugus, any comments this evening?
No, sir.
Ms. Rock?
Nothing.
Okay. We're going to move over to our reports of council members.
Dick,
Miss-
could
Yes.
you start up this end, because I have to go, I have to pick up a grandchild.
Absolutely. Actually, Mr. Duncan, I'll let you have the floor first. We'll start with you.
Yeah, just real
He's
quick.
got a grandchild again.
Yeah, I have to go pick a grandchild up. But my condolences to the Matteo family on their tragic loss in that terrible house fire there in Garden City. And also, I totally agree that the Public Works has done a fantastic job on snow removal. And that's all I have tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Mrs. Gatos.
I also of course, want to give condolences to the family that was the tragedy lost in Garden City. And thanks Public Works, but I think another part of this township that's never thanked is the Water Authority. I mean, they had, when I went to my first meeting in January, and wasn't even the end of the month, they had already gone on 15 water breaks. So, kudos to them, because when you got water flowing in cold temperatures, you get ice. So, big kudos as well. Nothing against to take away from Public Works, but please also remember the Monroeville Water Authority still out there doing a great job as well. And I think I will just keep everything else for Tuesday.
Okay. Mr. Poach.
Still have more for Tuesday, but up until this point, I want to appreciate Mr. Little and his staff and their folks helping to bring me up to speed with a number of activities and learning some of the municipal departments that are in place. The folks at the library have graciously agreed to meet with me a little at a time that's a little bit more convenient as well, and the folks at the Visitor and Conventions Bureau. So we'll try to get a standard reporting mechanism to be able to report to council on those activities. So I appreciate it.
Very good. Mr. Harvey.
Just a question and a comment. The question would be to Mr. Hugus. Is there any way of knowing on a particular road on how big the right-of-way is?
Yes. On a municipally owned road, yes.
What I'm saying is like on my street, how would I know how big the?
I have a master list of all the municipal roads
Oh, you would?
and the legal
you would
right-of-ways
tell
for
me
that.
that? Oh, okay.
Yes.
That was the first thing. And the second comment was basically chiming with everybody else, how not good of a job Public Works has done on the roads. And that's it.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Arasinko.
Just same thing to the family for the loss in that fire. Terrible. Obviously, I'll have a little bit more on Tuesday, but thank you.
Mr. Wilson.
First of all, I'd like to wish my wife a happy birthday.
Happy birthday.
Happy birthday, yesterday.
You didn't tell us.
And
Yeah, you didn't tell us, Tom.
also, my sympathy goes out to the family of the fire victim. And thanks, Mike Adams and your crews. You're always out there. I look out the window as I get up a few times during the night. And I'm always looking out the window when it's snowing, and I rarely see snow on Evergreen Drive, so you guys are always out there cleaning Evergreen Drive for me. Thank you.
Very good. And I'll finish up real briefly here. There is a upcoming event. It's not till the end of March, Friday, March 23rd. There is going to be a screening of the documentary Under Our Skin. It's the hidden story of Lyme disease. It's a program I'm putting together with PA Lyme Resource Network and the Pittsburgh Lyme Disease Support Group. And there'll be a screening, and then afterwards there'll be a question and answer session led by Dr. Joseph and Dr. Aramo, who are two local Lyme literate physicians. Pennsylvania is the #1 reporting state in the United States for Lyme disease over the past several years. It is a preventable disease, and we want to start getting some awareness out there to the public. But this screening will be at the Monroeville Senior Center on March 23rd. We'll be announcing it as we get closer to that date. I will also follow up with tip of the hat to Public Works for all their efforts during these recent snow events, and condolences as well to the Garden City families victim of the fire. Our thoughts and prayers are with them, and it's my understanding there was quite some neighbor involvement that really helped out, and it's what we like to see in this community, is neighbors helping out where they can. So, but our thoughts and prayers are with that family. And with that, I will seek a motion to adjourn.
Motion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you and good night.